I'm Alex, this is Code Along with Alex, and today we're going to define a command and arguments for a container in Kubernetes. So to get started, you're going to need a Kubernetes cluster with kubectl configured. I'm using the Killer Coda Kubernetes Playground today, but feel free to use whatever you like. There's a couple options linked in the tutorial, which I will include in the video description. Let's just jump right in. So the first section we're going to cover is defining a command and arguments when you create a pod. So when you create a pod, you can define a command and arguments for the containers that run in the pod. Sounds straightforward enough. To define a command, include the command field in the configuration file. To define arguments for the command, include the args field in the configuration file. Okay, so we just have to specify two fields in the configuration file, and we should be good to go. The commands and arguments that you define cannot be changed after the pod is created. Okay, so if we want to change stuff, we'll have to delete the pod, recreate it. Sounds fair enough. So the command and arguments that you define in the configuration file override the default command and arguments provided by the container image. If you define args but do not define a command, the default command is used with your new arguments. Okay, important to remember that. So we're going to now create a pod that runs one container, and let's declare some YAML. So we'll create a file called commands.yaml. Let's open that with Nano. Start out by declaring an API version field, set the value to 1. Kind field, it's a pod, so we'll set the value to pod. Then a metadata field with some nested information, a name subfield, and we'll call our pod command demo. We're also going to add labels, or a label subfield. And then in this subfield, we'll have its own subfield called purpose, and the value will be demonstrate command. Okay, so now let's create a spec field, and this is where we're going to specify our container image name, the image, the commands, and the arguments. So to start, we'll do a container subfield, which will have many subfields or parameters. I don't know what the name is when there's this dash. Subfield should work. So we'll set the name to command demo container. Next, we'll specify the image instead of our old friend Nginx. Today, we're going to use Debian. So cool, something different. So the Debian is just a Linux distribution. So I suppose we'll just be pulling a pretty vanilla Debian Docker image. Okay, so now let's specify some commands. Print-env. Okay, and then let's also specify some arguments. Hostname, Kubernetes port. Okay. And then finally, when nesting up, we'll do a restart policy, and we'll set that value to on failure. Sweet. Let's save this. Well, let me double check real quick. Everything looks good with a quick glance. We'll find out when we actually try to apply this configuration file. Let's save it and return back to our control plane. And so now I'm just going to do kubectl apply -f and then commands.yaml. we're just working in the default namespace, so I'm not specifying any kind of different namespace. And now our pod is created. So let's list the running pods, which we should just have one right now because I have not created any prior to this. Awesome. So we have pods. Now let's see the output of the command that ran in the container. Let's run this one more time. See if, I guess it should be ready. Okay. So we'll do kubectl logs, and then we'll pass the name of our pod. And our pod is named command demo. Nice. So you can see that the program printed out two values to our terminal: hostname and Kubernetes port environment variables. And so, voila. That's pretty exciting. We specified some commands, or a command and some arguments, in a container in our cluster. That's actually some pretty next level wizardry compared to no Kubernetes experience. So I'm pretty stoked, and you should be too if you've been following along on this journey with us. So now let's use environment variables to define arguments as a second section for our session today. So let me define some arguments using environment variables, and let's delete this pod, and then we'll edit the YAML and then recreate the pod. So kubectl delete pod command demo, and it's gone. Okay, now let's open the YAML file that has our configuration, and let's specify a new way of doing things. So previously we had used the containers, or excuse me, the commands and args coded as strings. Now let's mix it up and provide strings using environment variables instead of directly. So let's adjust our YAML, and I'm just checking my notes. Sorry for the silence while thinking. Okay. So we should still be in the spec field and then in the containers nesting. I guess. Let's. So this is an alternative. So that would mean that we should remove what we had. Okay. Let's see if this will work. I'll leave the restart policy. Let's delete the args. Or, oh, now I get it. Not sure if env needs to be its own deep nesting, or we'll find out. Name. Message. Value. Hello. Kubernetes. Okay. So now let's adjust our command here to instead be bin echo. Bin echo. And then our args, instead of the strings that we passed, this should interpolate our environment variable that we declared above, which is hello K8s. Okay, let me make sure I update this. Message. Awesome. And now let's save this. And now let's run kubectl apply -f commands.yaml. This should create a pod. Oh, unknown. Okay. So I think I put the env in the wrong nesting, which is super chill. It probably should be in spec, which is totally fine. Or, yeah, it should be in spec. Okay. We'll debug until it works. Name. Value. Hello. K8s. Now let me delete this thing that does not work. And then let's see if kubectl yells at us again. Name. Containers. I mean, it looks pretty chill. See what happens. Interesting. So spec env is not okay. Maybe spec needs to be removed. Okay. We're debugging on the fly. Let's remove. Let's remove the restart policy. Let's remove the image and the name and the containers. We're doing some serious modifications, people. It's fun though. I'll check the docs soon if I don't figure it out by just removing lines. But sometimes it's fun to just try it this way. Unknown field args. Interesting. Where should env be? There we go. I just was not doing it correctly. I looked it up. We should be good to go. I'm going to copy what it was so that it's easier to adjust what needs to be. I know there's the command. It's like Control K or something, but this is fine. Okay. Very nice. Now let's add the env field, and this is nested under the same level as as the name image under containers. Env name message value sup quietas. And then our command needs to be updated to be /bin/echo. Okay, hopefully this works. And then here we'll do the kind of variable to pass the environment variable. All right. Looks decent. Let's save. Try again. And it worked. Nice. Okay. Check the docs when things don't work. It's fun to try to troubleshoot to a point without external resources. So check the docs. Okay. And so now let's run this. Let's get our pods. Okay, so we got that. And then let's get the logs for that pod. Subcatus. Okay, cool. So it worked as expected. Okay, and then sometimes you might want to run your command in a shell. And so an example of that might be your command might consist of several commands piped together, or it might be a shell script. And so as a final example, let's delete our pod. Delete command demo. kubectl delete pod command demo. The order was wrong. Okay, let's open nano. Let's open the file. And now let's modify the args. So let's do -c. Throw a comma in there. While true, echo. Or while true, do echo. And then our sub K8s. And then sleep 10 done. Okay. Let's try this. While true, do echo message, and our message is sub K8s. Sleep 10 done. Save this. Rebuild our pod. Okay. Let's get our pod and make sure everything looks good. Sweet. And then let's get the logs for that pod. Cool. Not exactly what I was expecting, but works. All right. This was our whirlwind tour of running commands or defining a command and then specifying arguments a few different ways for a container in Kubernetes. It's kind of fun. Done a little bit of troubleshooting on the fly and reference the docs, which I'll share in the video description. But I'm Alex. This has been Code Along with Alex, and thanks for hanging out. I hope to see you next time. Bye.